Today we're having the shir, the Torah Or, Dach Yomi, on Daf Tes Amud Aleph. We're continuing the Mayim Rabim, Parshas Noach, the first Mayim in Parshas Noach. So we explained yesterday about the pasuk Mayim Rabim Melichel L'chabas Ava and the Haras Leish Tafuha Emitian Ishis Kol Hayin Beisai Ba'ava Baizi Vuzuloi, that the many waters, which means the many challenges of worrying about making money and physical matters in this world, they can't take away the Jew's love for Hashem. And we explained that not only does it not take away from his love, but it brings him to an even deeper love. That just like the Mabul was in order to purify the world, it wasn't just that Hashem wanted to destroy everything, but he wanted to purify the world, and that was the purpose of the waters of the Mabul. So too the waters of and the flowing distractions of Tirdas HaParnasa, of a person having to worry about physical matters, not only they don't take away his love from Hashem, but they bring him to a deeper love for Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe says that when does he experience this deeper love for Hashem that comes through being involved in Inyanim Gashmim, through having to worry about physical matters? That comes by davening. So he says what his mindedness is, what the person is thinking about by davening, that he comes to this great love that after being involved in Inyanim Gashmim. So the Maimer, so we'll start from the bottom of the previous page, the last two lines. That when a person is involved all day in physical matters and worrying about making money, which that's called darkness, because he doesn't see any spiritual light, and then he thinks afterwards in davening that every physical thing has a spiritual source. So all the life in this world has a spiritual source. In one level is comes through what's called the constellations, it comes through the malachim, through the angels, and the levels of angels. And all the levels of angels are only receiving one ray of light, one small idea of Hashem's life that he gives from Malchus of Atzilus, which that's how he creates all the created worlds. So all the life that's in all the created worlds is only it's like one ray of light compared to the sun. It's like one word and one thought of a person compared to his whole soul. So all the life in the world is incomparable completely to Hashem himself. Let's say it's so when a person thinks about the fact that his whole day he's working with physical things and is only thinking about how he has to have money to pay his bills, and then he comes and realizes that everything in the physical world and all the money in the world and all the physical things and all the created beings is only from one thought or one word of Hashem. And Hashem himself he connects through the Torah and the mitzvahs, and that's what he really wants. He really wants to connect to Hashem himself. So then he'll have a big desire to leave all the darkness of material reality, of the physical reality, and connect to Hashem himself, which that's called Mili Vashamayim Mim Chalei Chafas Divaretz. That even the spiritual worlds is only a slight revelation from Hashem. There's only one teaching about Hashem. Whereas Hashem himself is infinitely greater. And so he doesn't want anything physical, he doesn't want anything spiritual, he just wants Hashem. וכמיימר ז"ל צדיקים יושבים בחולו ונהנים מזיו השכנקים ודווקא בויס ברוך לכל בבחינס מהוסבת סמוסי ספרח וניקר בזר קודש להשתווה בגופה דמלכה חולו. So that's called in the Zohar that he wants to be included in the essence of Hashem, the essence of the king. Meaning he doesn't want the Hashem giving, the way that Hashem gives physical things, and the way that Hashem gives spiritual things, the spiritual understanding, and he wants to connect to Hashem himself. V'nikra b'chinas avazoi b'chinas tshuva shuba cheli yatir shuba davka mitecha chayshach shahaya eisig brak binyanim gashmi mahavli oilam. So this great love that he has, that he only wants Hashem himself, this is called b'cheli yatir. This is called teshuva, meaning just like when a person did an avera and they return from doing the avera and they feel far from Hashem and they have a big rush and a yearning that they want to reconnect to Hashem. So the same thing, a person that is involved in physical matters and he feels very far from Hashem, he has a big yearning and a rush that he wants to reconnect to Hashem. And this is brought about from the fact that he was involved in the physical matters. And because this is like light that's noticeable when it's in a place of darkness. So when you have light in a place where there's all light, when you have a candle and you bring it up to the sun, or you have a candle in the daylight, so you don't notice, it's not such a big deal that there's light. But in a place where there's darkness, so one candle is a very big thing. So the same thing when a yid is in the physical world and he's only surrounded by physical things, and he thinks Chassidus and he davens and he realizes that there's only Hashem. So this is such a big contrast between the darkness of the physical world and the truth of Chassidus and of Elokos, that it drives him all the way that he wants only to connect to Hashem's essence. So if he would be in Gan Eden, he would be happy with just Giluyim, he would be happy with just that he understands about Hashem. But now that he's in this world and he realizes how there's not all the created beings are only Ayin Vefes Mamish, how all the created beings are nothing compared to Hashem, this brings him to a big yearning to realize that there's really nothing of any value besides Hashem himself, that he shouldn't want anything physical or anything spiritual, only Hashem, because of this contrast from being in the place of darkness. V'nikra ava zoi b'chinas b'chol ma'idecha shu b'ligvol mamish sheba davka mena hipuch shu ha'chayshech ukama shekasiv toiv ze malach chayim ukama shekasiv toiv ze malach chayim toiv ma'oid ze malach ha'mavis sh'arei hipuch v'chayshech davka shuhu b'chinas nefesh b'hamis yecholim laved b'chinas avas b'chol meinecha shuhu b'ligvol mamish. And that's what it says in the Gemara, that the good, when it says in Bereshis, Toiv, that Hashem saw the world as good, that means that Hashem gave us life. And this says it's very good, it's called Malach HaMavis, angel of death. L'chora doesn't make sense. If life is good, so then why would death be even better? L'chora, death should be worse than being alive, right? What's the answer? Because the answer is that through transforming the opposite of life into life, that's a much deeper kind of life. In other words, for example, somebody that had an accident, God forbid, and they were almost killed, chas v'shalom, and then they survived. They're very grateful that they're alive, because then they realize how special it is to be alive. Somebody who has everything going smooth and easy, so they might not value what's so great about being alive. I was alive yesterday, and everybody that I know is alive. So okay, so what's so great about being alive? But somebody who saw what's the opposite of being alive, then he understands how great it is that he is alive. Then he can actually appreciate life. So that's the idea here, that in the place of darkness and physicality, he comes to a great love for Hashem because he realizes that there's nothing that's have any value besides Hashem. So that's one idea. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to give another deeper explanation of how the Nefesh HaBahamis and being in the physical world and dealing with physical matters brings a person a deeper love for Hashem. Not only because he's in a place of darkness and the place of physicality, and therefore when he learns Chassidus and he thinks about Hashem, he comes to a deeper love because in contrast to the darkness, but also because the source of Nefesh HaBahamis, the source of Klipa, is from Taihu, is from a higher place than the Nefesh HaElokis. And since it has this very high source, the source where Hashem's light is infinite, so it's able to bring you to an infinite love for Hashem. This is a deeper explanation of how being in this world brings you to a deeper love for Hashem. V'hainu lefisha b'sharasha l'mayla mayla. Shirish nefesh b'hamis gavoy yosir b'bechinas nefesh elokis u'kamash kasu v'ida hamalachim asher malchol chulu l'fnei malach melech l'vnei Yisrael shehu b'chinas nefesh elokis. Rak sh'ayidei shviras hakilim nafel l'mata mata kamash kasu v'yimlach v'yimas chulu al b'sharashim him l'mayla mayla b'bechinas nefesh elokis. Because the source of the nefesh b'hamis is from the world called Tohu, in the world of Tohu. So the light is infinite. And that's why the Kalim broke. That's why it wasn't able to exist as a world. Because if light is infinite, then nobody can handle infinite light. But since it comes from a place of infinite light, so even though it broke and it came down into a place of Klippa, the Nefesh Bahamis now has the Yetzer Hara and it wants to not do not good things. But since in its source it comes from a place of infinite light, that's how he's able to bring you to an infinite love for Hashem. And that's why even the way the Nefesh Bahamis came down into this world, it's able to give a greater strength to the Nefesh Elokis, because its source is from the Melucha, it's from this exaltedness, from the infinite light. So the Alter says another thing. Not only is your Nefesh Bahamis from Tohu, but all the physical things you're involved with are from Tohu. And therefore all of them give additional strength to your Nefesh Elokis, that you're able to come to this infinite love. And that's the idea, that all the physical things you need for food, clothing, and shelter, and parnasa, are all coming from Tohu. That a person needs them, and they don't need you. Why? Why is it that a person needs money, and the money doesn't run after the person, and the person has to find food, clothing, and shelter, and they don't run after him? Why? If a person is much higher than them, they should come and beg, say, you're much higher than us, so we need you, come, elevate us. How come it's not like that? Because in their source, in Tohu, they really are higher. And that's why you have an advantage. You become elevated when you use them. When you use them in the service of Hashem, the food, clothing, and shelter in the physical world, you become elevated because their source in Tohu is from Hashem's infinite light. And that's why you need them to become elevated. Read us with Nefesh Elokis b'Nefesh Bahamis Tavka Lasik b'Tiras Amachshavas Arpanasa b'Yinim Gashmim Shehem Anikreim Mayim Rabbi Manal Yochel Lava l'Bechinas Avas B'Chol Ma'idecha. So since in their source they're even higher than Nefesh Elokis, that's why a person who's involved in these physical matters is able to come to deeper love for Hashem. But that's called the Mayim Rabbim. That just like the many waters of the Mabul, they purified the world and made an elevation in the whole world. And so too, being involved in the physical matters, even though it looks like a darkness, but since in their source in Tohu, their ultimate source in Hashem's infinite light, so they're able to bring you to infinite love for Hashem. Shub bli gvul kanal, shehi madriga yisr gavoya, mi yisr koydem yirida sebaguf, sheisar aknenis miziva shechina chulu. V'hainu alidei iskafiyas hapcha chashecha davka, shub b'chenes yisr nor shemitoicha chashecha kanal, lefi sheshra shemamayla gavoya, mi madrigas nefesh elokis kanal, rak shnaf lemata, k'mashkas levim lachveimas chulu. V'alidei iskafiyas naset techias hamesim. The Alter ends off with an interesting idea. He says, where's the source in the Chumash, the Kabbalah quotes about the idea of Tohu? It says that in the Jewish people they had kings who ruled over the Yidden. And before there were kings for the Yidden, Edom also had kings. From Esav and Edom there were kings. And the kings, they died and the next one took over until the Yidden were able to take over Edom for a certain time during the time of Shlomo HaMelech. So in Kabbalah it says, there's a reference to the fact that before there was Tikkun, before there was Atzilus, there was Tohu. But in Tohu it died. Why did it die? Because the light was infinite, and no one can handle infinite light. That would be like if a person would have all his soul powers completely revealed infinitely at the same time. He would go crazy. So that's why it broke, it died, and it came down here. So if it died, so how does it help you now? How does it help you to become elevated when you use physical things if it broke? So the answer is that when you, through your iskafia and this hapcha, you're elevating it and you're giving it to chias hamesim. You can bring it back to life. Those physical things which are now in klipa and originally came from Tohu, so you're using it for Torah mitzvahs, through this kafi and this hapcha, you reveal it in it, its source in Tahu, and you bring it back to life, that it should be returned to holiness, and that now it can help you also. Even though before it couldn't even help itself, it couldn't do anything, when you elevate it through its kafi and its hapcha, it can elevate you to this infinite love for Hashem. And that's what it means, that it's better 1 minute or 1 time in this world than all of Olam Haba, than all in Gan Eden. Because in Gan Eden, it's only revelation of Hashem, which is limited. Whereas in this world, you come to have an infinite love and an infinite connection to Hashem's essence through connecting to Him to the Torah mitzvahs in this world. So another author is going to explain about Mei Noach, why they're called the waters of Noach. What's the comparison? They're just like by Noach, the waters picked up the teva above the water, very, very high. That boat was originally on the ground, but through the waters, it picked it up even higher than the highest mountain. That's how high the water picked up the boat. So the same thing, even though there's this covering and distractions from the Nefesh Habahamis, from physical matters, but through the tevus of Torah and Tefillah, through davening and learning, not only it doesn't take away your love for Hashem, but it picks it up higher than you could ever accomplish by itself. And that's why it's called Mei Noach, because Noach means enjoyment and satisfaction, and the greatest satisfaction you can have is to have this infinite love for Hashem that comes from elevating the physical things, from being in this world, and then you come to love Hashem by davening. So this is the greatest satisfaction you can have. And this is like the Baal Shem Tov says on the pasuk, come into the teva. So the word teva means a boat, but it could also mean a word, and it means the words of Torah and Tefillah. So just like the boat was lifted up through the water, so the words of davening and learning, and here we're speaking about davening because that's where you experience this elevation. So your davening becomes elevated by being involved in physical matters and having to worry about parnasa. And from that you transform it into this great love for Hashem by davening. So that water of all those physical things pick up your davening to have an infinite love, to have a much deeper love for Hashem. Now the Alter Rebbe says that this is very applicable and practical to us. And this is the mistake that people involved in business make, that they think they can't daven as much as people who are in yeshiva or in kollel, that they can daven barichas and they don't have to worry, because the opposite is true. They can daven with much more depth because the light is more pronounced, is more real when it's in a place of darkness, meaning that the Baalei Asakim, that they have to be involved with physical matters, and from that they come to a great love for Hashem by davening. That's a much deeper love. So they shouldn't think that, well, if I was in yeshiva and if I was in kollel, then I could really daven, I could learn chassidus and daven, I wouldn't have to worry. Saying no, when you have all these worries and then you push aside all those worries and you give yourself over to Hashem by davening and you come to a genuine love, that love is much more powerful than you can have when you don't have any worries. So now the Alter is going to explain how this is hinted to, or how this you understand this from the word Noach. There's two explanations of Noach. Noach could mean to rest, could also mean enjoyment. So that's, you're going to say that's the idea of Shabbos. Then Shabbos, the enjoyment comes from the rest. That when you're working hard all week, and then on Shabbos you rest, then you have a very great enjoyment because the whole time you were involved in what you're doing. And now you can go into yourself and have enjoyment. It's the same thing about Asik. That the whole day he's worried about physical matters. So when it comes time for davening, then he's not worried about any physical matters. He's only thinking about Hashem. So then, that's like Shabbos. That's his Shabbos. every day, Shabbos is when he comes time for davening. That he's able to put aside all his physical matters and go into himself and return to his deep connection to Hashem, to experience his deep connection to Hashem. And that's the ultimate enjoyment. That's why Shabbos means rest and enjoyment.